people react to external environment change because they're not necessarily stewarding their internal environment as much, right? Yeah, we react. We want to react. It's what we learned as babies. I'm tired, I'm hungry, I'm wet. Oh, solution. So it's biological, and it's, what's that, like from the caveman times, right? Like it's just so ingrained. Yeah, primal. Yeah, thanks. But we grow up and we don't grow out of that. And a lot of what I see when people are complaining is because they're unhappy. They're unhappy with themselves or their life. There's a van parked in front of my house. Can you go and find out whose it is and why it's there?
We just wrapped the most unexpectedly juicy episode with Mia Frankle. Guys, she is a wealth of information. She coaches babypreneurs, as she calls them, and really looks at it from a holistic approach. So I want you to listen out for that. She also has a unique perspective on growing your own business and maybe not wanting to leave the 9 to 5, but having both of them and doing it well. And then she is a bylaws enforcement officer up in British Columbia, Canada. So she talks all about short-term rental regulations and permitting, and shares some like really fun stories of people who have complained about their neighbors. So it's a really fun episode. Can't wait for you guys. Let's dive in. Mia, thank you so much for being here with us today. You have such a beautiful, vibrant purple background, and I know that's in your branding as well. Tell me a little bit more about you and Powerful, and just what brought you to here today.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Thanks, Madeline. Powerful Inc. was like a natural evolution. I didn't intend or know that it was going to drop. And the name for it and the play on words for it just landed one day. So I believe in God. So we'll say God delivered that gift to me. And it allowed an opportunity for me to pivot from the way that I was growing my online business to fit better with my lifestyle. So I was an online business manager, and it was too hectic while working a full-time job and raising a young child to make the transition, right? And you guys, years later, like I don't know that I even want to quit my day job anymore. I kind of like having a nice little coaching practice and my day job, and all of these different streams of revenue that are available to me. So Powerful Inc. is a coaching practice for the everyday woman to live her best day ever, every day. And I
love
my
that.
sweet t-shirt on purpose because it's exactly what I just said. Life can be what you want it to be. So build your own dream versus buying what somebody else is selling.
That is what we are all about over here, creating the life that you want to live and not settling for what somebody else's version of success is. And I love that perspective of, and that self-awareness of saying, hey, I may not want to leave my 9 to 5, but I may want this business over here as well because it fulfills a certain part of what brings me joy. And I think there are so many people on the internet, like leaving the 9 to 5 is the goal. And that's definitely a part of my story as well. I talk about being part of a COO of a government contracting company. What I don't share a lot is that was a business that was a family business. I worked hand in hand with my dad. He's a founder and an inventor. And when we started our short-term rental business, it was never my goal to leave the 9 to 5. It was my goal to have my husband leave the 9 to 5 and give him some more flexibility to spend time with our family. But I didn't set out thinking that was the case, and it eventually evolved into me wanting to leave the 9 to 5. But you having that self-awareness of saying, you know what, that's not my goal. I'm going to continue building balance in the rest of my life so I can contribute to that. How have you built that balance with juggling daughter, 9 to 5, and your coaching practice? Like, what does that look like for you?
I'm laughing because you guys, there's no secret cookie cutter answer to that. It's a hot mess. to, days where I'm killing it and I feel on top of the world to days where I'm like fetal position crying on the floor. And that is life in general. So let's not think that there's something we're missing or not doing or not being when we're experiencing that reality of emotions and highs and lows. That's what life is. So, what has really helped me, though, anchor in is being organized. And one of my taglines is structure without constriction. So, there's like,
Ooh,
structure without restriction. So, then we have like the combination of the masculine and feminine energy, where the masculine energy holds the structure, right? It's the structure. And the feminine energy can flow around in that space. And that's why I was online business manager. It's so structure heavy. I was in love with that, but there was no room for creative flow in there for me. So I've built
mm,
my business around my life by using a scheduler, by setting regular working hours, by automating as much as I can or leveraging digital team assistants, right? Like ChatGPT, social media post schedulers, automating email send outs, all of that sort of stuff. Do the work once, let it repeat, sort of thing. And now finding the flow in that and building my daily habit of what am I showing up for today and who am I going to be today to create the masterpiece of life that I'm seeking, because it's
beautiful.
built one day at a time.
You're speaking my language. Automate as much as you can from really from the beginning. Start documenting your processes and your recipes. So, do you have a team? Are you a solopreneur over here?
Yeah, it's me doing all
Okay,
the
great.
things right
Yeah.
now. Um, it's not a lot of work per se,
Mhm.
so that's comfortable. Um, and I don't really like the word solopreneur. I prefer collaborapreneurs.
Well, I stand corrected here. Please elaborate on that.
Yeah. So I mean, yes, it's just me working on my business in my business, but I have teamed up with a lot of other phenomenal women, my preferred demographic, where we build things together. So I'm a guest coach in other memberships. I'm pulling other women together to build something like the Everyday Women Summit that I held in February, where we're all contributing and sharing, say, my message, but across multiple women's businesses and platforms to put them on stage and to help put me on stage so that we can cross pollinate and work in a more like threaded together approach rather than a linear of just me trying to push forward and shout out my message. I'm teaming up, linking arms, and then I can share her message and she can share mine and we share the other her and so on and so forth. And you just bring more people together that way.
Oh, that's that's a beautiful sentiment, and if I use the term, I will give you credit for it because I
Yeah.
think it is such a great sentiment to be able to collaborate on other people's businesses with them. I mean, a rising tide raises all ships, and that's what I say to my clients all the time. It's like at the top, people are collaborating, community over competition, and we're in this together. Just because your success does not detract from my success.
At all.
And
It
so
builds. Yeah, it
it
builds.
bubbles.
And if you're a woman like me, which is just an everyday woman with a job and a business and a heart of service, it's lonely. And if you're a new female entrepreneur who is my utmost, like most delicious person, it's extra lonely. And you're a bit like a sheep in a field of wolves, because everyone's going to want to jump on you as you start to learn your way around, which is where getting together in a mastermind type or in a safe community that allows you to be a new entrepreneur uh, and feel safe and feel supported in that vulnerable stage, like a baby. Babypreneur is another term that I made up. Give me the babypreneurs. Um, then you're stronger and you have a better chance of survival, essentially, right? So
You have
this is
such a
what I
nurturing
yeah.
energy. I love that.
Mamma mia. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. But it's so fitting and so needed for those babypreneurs because it's a dog world out there. You get especially once the algorithms start realizing that you're starting your own thing and you start thinking, "Oh, there's an ad agency here, there's a this, there's a that, there's a," and it's so overwhelming of what do I go with? What's actually gonna help my business? What's my best next step for what I'm doing? And as you know, in the short-term rental space, people are getting bombarded with it all the time as well. I know you have some short-term rental knowledge and know-how. Mia is up in Canada, guys. Um, and so I wanted to give that asterisk for all of our Canadian listeners. She has some particularly good insight, guys, up there. So tell us more about that part of your life.
This is really fun for me because I don't often talk about the day job, but I have to own it and make more space for it because it's a big piece of who I am
Yeah.
in a lot of ways, and it suits my personality and my purpose in the world. So, in my day job, I work in local government and I deal with neighbors who complain about each other. Yeah, hilarious. There's stories for days about the things that people obsess over.
I
But
want to
guess
hear at least
what?
one.
Yeah.
Um, Let me know when. Uh, when people complain about each other, it could mean that they're complaining about your short-term rental because guests have arrived late at night. They're, using their phone flashlight to try and get in. They've invited friends over because they're visiting locally and they're outside until 2 a.m., being loud. Um, Maybe the garbage isn't getting picked up. Maybe parking is an issue. There's a lot of peripheral activity that can happen when a property is being used by people who are transient,
Yes.
right? And so this is where, as a responsible property owner and business owner, you want to provide a service that's good for the clients and good for the neighborhood in which it's taking place. And that keeps you out of trouble and builds something a lot more holistic and considerate that is, different in the community. And the other really important piece is to make sure that whatever community you're thinking of doing this in allows that use. So in Canada and in BC, where I am, not every local government allows for residential zoned properties to be used for short-term rental.
Okay. So a lot to unpack there. I think we just dive right in with your craziest story, and then we'll take the conversation from there. What is the craziest, like, you won't believe this nonsense story you have?
Oh God, there are so many. One, and they're just ridiculous, right? One is that a chicken got loose and came over to the neighbor's house. These dear souls, like the neighbor's chicken, it went something like this. The neighbor's chicken came over. I saw it hop over the fence. It followed me around for a little. I think it wanted food, and now it's wandered off onto the street. I have a photo if you would like.
What did they expect you to do with said chicken?
I guess get it and bring it home. Yes, go get
Okay.
the chicken and bring it home. And there is a rule that says if you have chickens, they're not to wander at large. They have to stay on your property. So, I mean, it's pretty adorable and crazy that to think that a government official is going to come and, grab a chicken and put it back home when I would think the neighbor could just pick up the chicken.
Put it back.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
I personally have chickens. I live
yeah.
on 10 acres where
Oh,
it's
wow. Uh,
allowed,
yeah.
but, my chickens still go visit my neighbor, you know? I mean, it's pretty hard to keep them contained. They have a mind of their own, and they surely don't listen when you say backyard, you know? I told you, you can't go visit the neighbors. I mean, it's just not feasible. You can't even do a collar or
No,
one
nothing.
of those
No,
e-fences with them.
no, you'd have to
Like,
fence them in, right? Yeah.
yeah. Well,
And
e
yeah,
I have I have fencing, but they c believe it or not, they can fly a little bit. They
enough.
have some ups,
Yeah,
so,
yeah, yeah,
I mean, but I get it. They're not supposed to be at large, so,
yeah,
wow.
yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Okay, so what are some of your best tips to property owners to help build that holistic, collaborative, you know, environment that you were talking about that serves the client but is also respectful of the neighbors? And what have you seen that works well?
If you're shopping for a property, then you have to shop and do a lot of due diligence. Um, the two elements that strike the most are going to be the zoning bylaw, so what properties are allowed to do, and then the building code bylaw, which is whether or not a specific dwelling unit, is built in accordance with construction standards. So we would call that like any legal suite, which means it wasn't built with a built-in permit. So if you're shopping around, you want to buy a really good, a really healthy piece of property that you can run your short-term rental in. BC just released changes that says that you have to live or have your primary residence as the short-term rental property. So I think that's 6 months or more of the year that's where you're living in order for it to be eligible. And the province has actually just released a registry where they want you to put your property in, and it connects to Airbnb and the other platforms for verification before the listing can continue. So if you intend to do this, either to supplement your main income or to provide a service, you want to get those obstacles out of the way, because what people are finding is that they're now going to lose revenue that they were relying on to pay for the property and or to support them living at the property and using a part of it um, for short-term rental.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And that translates down into the States as well. We tell all of our coaching and mentorship clients the first thing that they do before they ever start running numbers and analyzing deals in an area, one, look online, but two, go the extra step further and call that planning and zoning department and say, hey, I'm looking to open a short term rental in this area. What do I need to know? What ordinances, what zoning? Asking those questions ahead of time, because it's going to be really disappointing if you think that you found the perfect property. You run all the numbers, it looks amazing, only to find out before closing that it's not even allowed. So we tell our clients, before you ever start looking at Zillow, make sure that in the zoning and the permitting process, you need to know what that is ahead of time. That way, when it's the right deal, that the numbers work, you're able to immediately upon closing, you already have your checklist of things to do to make sure.
I've had to shut down a property that sold advertising 4 different rental units, and none of them were built with building permits. And the MLS listing, the real estate listing, said that this property generates excess of 40,000 a year in rental revenue. So those buyers would have been buying that property on the premise of the additional cash flow from it, only to have bylaw attend and say none of this is legal use. And 2 of the 4 units need to be decommissioned, and one of them can be legalized or decommissioned as well. And that completely changes the entire analysis of what that property was to be for them.
That's interesting. I'm curious if that works the same way in the States or if that's a BC, like Canada thing. Talk to me about, so just because it wasn't permitted correctly during the building process, they can retroactively say that it's not up to code? Or is it just if it's not up to code? Like, how does that work, guys?
It's not up to code because the additional construction of more dwelling units
Got
occurred
it.
without building permits, and
Interesting.
or zoning wouldn't allow that many dwelling units on that property.
Makes perfect sense. So, planning, it's critical to consult the powers that be before you purchase a property.
Yeah, that's your
Okay.
due diligence before. Then when you have the property, it goes back to what I said about being good for the people who come and being good to the neighborhood. So having, very clear rules and expectations of how your guests are to behave, and making it very easy for them to have a smoothless entrance and exit from the property, so that, like, I've had stories where in more rural settings, guests aren't sure which property to go to, right? It's not clearly marked, it's dark maybe when they arrive, they're going to the wrong property. That's very disruptive if somebody is at home with young children and then all of a sudden, an unexpected car is pulling into the driveway. It's
No kidding.
alarming, right? So making it as seamless as possible for the guest, but also for the neighbors so that the neighbors essentially don't really notice that this is happening. And shocking or not, one of the biggest complaints is really parking, right?
Mhm.
And
Not
so,
shocking to me at all.
okay. I'm still so surprised. Like I live in such an awesome little, very rural agricultural community, and everybody's freaking out about parking every day. It's the thing I do the most, and I'm like, how is this the problem?
Why are we talking about parking still? It's your your point about making sure that the check-in instructions is very clear. I I tell my clients that I want you to think about it from a guest perspective. Been on an 8-hour road trip, you got lost, your partner is upset, your children are screaming in the back of the car, and you just want to get into wherever the heck that you're going and chill. So think about it from that perspective. You've had an awful travel day. So that means we are going to send that very clear check-in information in multiple ways. You're going to send it via, why can't I talk today? Via email, whatever channel that they booked on, so Airbnb or Verbo, and you're going to send it by text message because you never know where that person is going to look after that hellish travel day. But also making sure that they're not knocking on a neighbor's door. We go one step further and we have video virtual tours for most of our properties showing, especially the ones that we know are a little bit tricky to find. We have a video walkthrough of this is what the parking lot looks like. This is the steps you go up. And anticipating your guest needs so that they're not having to ask you those questions. One, it's also a good hosting experience, not just the client experience, but in the neighbor experience, but a good hosting experience because unfortunately, check in time typically happens between 4 p.m. and 7 p.m., which as parents, we know is the witching hour. I
Mhm.
can't
Yeah.
tell you. Like,
Right.
if something's going to go wrong, it's when my kids are screaming. I've got them in the bath. I'm trying, and the guest is like, I can't find the place. And I was like, it's never convenient for anybody. So do yourself a favor and anticipate the needs of those guests and send the check-in instructions. If you know it's a little bit tricky, create a video that can be sent ahead of time. It's just going to make everyone's life easier. You're not going to have, Mama Mia coming over and saying, "Hey, we had another complaint from the neighbor."
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so true. It goes both ways. Make it easy for you because I have friends who short-term rental. And it's exactly what you described, Madeline. We're in the thick of something and the guest can't get in. And now you're starting to kind of sweat and react and freak out because you don't want to get a bad review, et cetera. So all of that preparatory work works really well and also shows the neighbors that you are very involved. Like short-term rental is not just an automated set and repeat. It's work and it's good concierging and five-star service for you, for them, for everybody, right? So I, in my line of work, I don't, I want to see somebody really take responsibility rather than look at it as just a cash cow. It's not just a cash cow. It is an entire um, community that you are building, contributing to, and then being a representative of. So every single host is an ambassador for all the other hosts. And you're either going to create a good reputation or a bad reputation for each other, which will then influence your local politicians on whether or not they want to allow this in their community, because they can change the rules anytime, guys.
Absolutely. And what you're describing is exactly what we are encouraging our clients to be because it's the hobby hosts that I call them that are giving the rest of us bad names because they're not treating it like a professional business. We're in the hospitality industry. That means we are providing a service. And that same service is what I advocate. I work with a lot of local community governments, like local governments, on drafting ordinances and things that are, good for both sides. And the perspective that I bring when I'm speaking to them is short-term rentals are not really the enemy in my perspective when it's done correctly by people who are running professional business, because I keep my property to hospitality standards, meaning I have a yard person there every single week during the growing season. I am having my property professionally maintained inside and out. If somebody is being noisy, it's written into my rental agreement that I can evict them immediately. One of my home markets is in a college town, and so there's a lot of long-term rentals that host college students during the year. And I said, "You better believe, guys, if I get a bunch of frat boys living in this house, they're also going to throw a party. But you know what you can't do? You can't kick them out if they're disturbing the neighborhood. You might be able to cite them, but they're not maintaining the yard and other things." And so it's my point is, let's all be professional hosts, treating it like a business, and be good neighbors. But I don't think there's much of an argument to be made about long term versus short term as far as the standard of a neighborhood. Because if I'm looking at the long term rentals in my neighborhood versus the short term rentals look much better, and are much more well maintained. Thoughts on that?
In my experience, um, I get complaints about everything.
Yeah,
So it
fair
it
point.
doesn't necessarily matter. And a lot of what I say about running a short term applies to running a long term
Yep.
as well. If you want to have a success, and it's kind of heartbreaking that people are a bit more judgmental around renters, which I rented for a long time. It was my proper home and I loved it and was a good steward of it as a tenant. But I mean, statistically, there are bad tenants. There's going to be bad guests. There's going to be, just like dating and finding a romantic partner, kiss a lot of frogs to get a prince. So they're not indifferent. So again, if you are really want to be serious about running a business, because long term or short term, that's what it is, then you have to hold yourself to task to make sure that it's a success. The people who are coming and using your property are not the ones who are responsible for maintaining that and keeping it a success. And if you're doing a long-term rental and you want to delegate that, then like Madeline's saying, is having very clear terms and consequences if they don't, because there's lots of times I go to a property with long grass and I have to find out if they're the owner or the tenant and who's responsible. And then that person has to do the work. And frat houses, we have universities where I live, and we get those kinds of houses, and we're responding based on noise complaints from those parties. And then usually they're rented to too many people, and people do get evicted because you have to reduce the number of persons living there. There's a limit on it. So there's like a lot of not even nuances, but a lot of logistics to manage. And so think about, what do you want to have to deal with or
Right.
not deal with?
Choose
And
your hard.
your setup comes before launching. It
Yes.
all comes before getting all those ducks in a row and really dialed in, and then being willing to keep the ducks in a row on an ongoing basis.
Absolutely. A little hosting tip: if you, especially, are know that you are hosting in an area that may be prone to some rambunctious guests, I love a system called Minute, which is a noise monitoring system as well as smoke detection. So what that Minute does is it integrates with our property management software. And so if the decibel level reaches a certain level, it automatically text messages the guest and asks them to be quiet. It also alerts us. But as far as being a good neighbor, that's one of the things that we share with our neighbors of, "Hey, yes, this is a short-term rental, but we do take these precautions to make sure that we are being proactive host. At this decibel level, you would not even hear this outside the house, but we want to make sure that we are addressing it and before it gets to a point where it's disturbing you as our neighbor." And we're proactive about that. And I think that's a really good thing that you can do as a host. If you're a host in an apartment building or a condo or even a single family residence, those types of things take you from hobby host to professional host. And it's going to just let the people around you know, but also just keep those situations at bay before they get out of
Well, you don't want your neighbors to complain and possibly have you shut down. Because
No.
if you did get a business license from your local town hall, there are options to put conditions on that business license or revoke it. And, listening to you, that sounds like an amazing app. We had a rural property. It wasn't permitted for short-term rental, but until there was a complaint and we were able to address that, the hot tub was the source of the problem because people are outside late and potentially having drinks. And then in a rural neighborhood, noise carries even
Oh,
more. Like
yeah.
picture your 10 acres being outside. Like that's just gonna, cross,
Nothing to stop it.
yeah, nothing to stop it. So knowing what kind of neighborhood you're in and what the culture or the vibe of that makes a big difference too. We have some communities that are in really fun little hotspot, lots of bistros, cafes, bars, whatever, noisier community, a little bit more flexible. Rural setting or residential setting, you want to match the vibe. And that kind of keeps you a little bit, I'm going to say under the radar, but more in alignment with um, that particular area, which again brings in this holistic piece of fitting in with the location.
How do you mediate uh, with neighbors who just don't
Mhm.
like somebody because they just don't like somebody?
Yeah.
They may not have a legitimate thing, but the dog barks one time and they're like losing their minds over something because they just have determined that they don't like it.
Yeah, 100%. That's another crazy story. Like
Oh, plenty. However much we want. Tell me. Drop it for us.
are you familiar with the movie Duplex starring Drew Barrymore and Ben Stiller?
No, but it sounds like I need to go watch it.
It is the craziest, most comical. I mean, I love Ben Stiller and his sense of humor. So him and Drew are they're great comedic chemistry. And they, young couple, buy this duplex, yay, our house. And they have an insane old lady who's crazy. And it just derails the whole adventure. And it's very funny, but humor often comes from real life.
Right.
And I have seen, again, because like I'm a healer and I'm here to coach and empower people, it's really disheartening when they embed themselves into like a cancerous type of behavior in creating conflict between neighbors. And so this one set of neighbors, um, neighbor A, has literally driven out and gone through civil action with upwards of 4 or 5 other neighbors. And they're single family dwellings, but the way that the lot was divided puts them in close proximity.
Okay.
And the one neighbor is, one might say, a bit antagonistic, but right up to the edge, right up to the edge. So, like you say, the dog barking once is not really a violation, right? And dogs are supposed to bark. So, barking dogs is a very difficult enforcement matter, unless there's like neglect or excessively being left outside. And trying to design parameters to control and enforce on that is challenging. But this neighbor A takes it right up to the line and then stops and antagonizes for no good reason, because I can see now their 30-year history and the changeover in neighbor B, um, to the point where after all the dust was settled and myself and other agencies put so much work trying to resolve this conflict, neighbor A decides to still antagonize neighbor B. So neighbor B comes back in, and I'm like, you're done. Like, I can't. I'm not doing this again. We've been through it all. You have a weird neighbor, and I'm sorry about your luck. It came down to that. There are some people who are just going to be like that. So, first rule of real estate: location, location, location. Like, go and knock on some doors, and they might seem okay. Knock on other doors too, and kind of get a sense of what's going on, because that is an extreme situation, and I haven't seen too many in my 10 plus career, 10-year plus career. that have gone to that level, but they do go to that level. And I'm only exposed to, the few small communities I've been employed in. And you can only do what you can. We're not in the business of behavior change. And some people are just going to be how they are, right? And what kind of person then and neighbor do you want to be? And how are you going to manage? Now, if somebody is being vexatious or petty, my approach is I'm not a yes man. I'm not here to say, we'll get them. Well, yes, that blade of grass is taller than the rest. And we're going to fine them for it. It's not like that. It's finding reasonable, humane solutions that are compromising, that are fair, and that are consistent. Especially, I work in a small community. Everybody knows everybody and everybody knows me. So I have integrity. I'm maintaining a good reputation and I'm finding solutions, again, that are, reasonable because people are allowed to use their property. Short-term rental is a permitted use. And just because you don't like it, it doesn't mean that you can whine and complain about it like a toddler until mommy or daddy sticks a screen or a bottle in your face.
So the barking dog situation, I have a personal story with that, and it gets pretty wild. So I was living in a small town, and we were very close to the city, and a small town, but very close to like city center area. So um, houses fairly close to each other. We had been there for 2 or 3 years. I have two great, so they're big dogs, and part of their breed is their guardians. And so they bark in the evening. We had some neighbors move in. They had an elderly lady had been there. She loved my dogs. New neighbors moved in. They bought the house. They could not stand the bark. But the dogs have been there for years at this point. And I mean, he was a code enforcement officer, one. And he was just like losing. He would set off his car alarm in the middle of the night to get back.
To get the dogs. Oh, okay. And then the dogs would bark. And then, yeah.
So, long story short, we were looking to transition and move closer to my family a few hours away. And we ended up doing that. Hence the 10 acres. The dogs perk as much as they want.
Yeah.
So we made friends with our new neighbor. And we just preemptively said, hey, they bark. We're so sorry. We try to keep them quiet, but they are guardians of our little 3 work goats. And, they're just doing their job. And my neighbor made the comment. She said, I don't care as long as you don't care about my little beagle barking crazy, because that's actually why you have your house. And I said,
Oh, wow.
do tell. And she shared that the former owner of our house hated her dogs barking so much that she shot a weapon that went through at her dogs, that went through her home. And they had to have a court order, and she was required to sell her house. And that's how we ended up with our house. And I said, I don't care about your dogs as long as you don't care about my dog. She's like, we're all here together. And we had a bonding experience as neighbors, and we won the neighbor lottery. I love her little dog. She loves mine. And, we just sing Kumbaya with our barking dogs
100%.
now.
That's incredible that 2 neighbors who experienced dog barking prejudice ended up
Yes.
together. And what happens most often, the pattern I see is when there is a change of occupancy. So new tenants move in or out, or new owners move in or out, that's when new complaints start, because it's change. People react to external environment change because they're not necessarily stewarding their internal environment as much, right?
Ooh.
Yeah, we react. We want to react. It's what we learned as babies. I'm tired, I'm hungry, I'm wet. Wah! Oh, solution. So it's biological, and it's, what's that, like from the caveman times, right? Like it's just so
Primal.
ingrained. Yeah, primal. Yeah, thanks. But we grow up and we don't grow out of that. And a lot of what I see when people are complaining is because they're unhappy. They're unhappy with themselves or their life. there's a van parked in front of my house. Can you go and find out whose it is and why it's there? So, okay, is it like blacked out windows and it says free candy? Like, what's the
Yeah.
concern?
Is there an actual safety concern or you just don't like
Or
it?
there's just a car in front of your house and you're on like, right? So, um, if you're, to tie this in, then if you're buying a property, meet your neighbors, go and say, oh, hi, da da da, I'm so and so, because we've lost a lot of that human touch. There's, at least I'm finding, a bit more anonymity. Like, one of the things I love about my street, we're a dead end street. I know the names of every single house. There's about 10 houses on here. I know everybody's name. We bring them cookies at Christmas. Like, the kids play on the street. It's very much Beaver Cleaver and it's
Love that.
wonderful. But
Mhm.
it's more rare nowadays. More
Very.
people, more units, more individuality, more technology. So integration and creating safety when there is a change applies in real estate as much as it does to how we live our everyday life, because our brain reacts to triggers that it perceives as not being safe, which is why change of occupancy in a property, complaints, change, unknown, alert, alert, alert.
Yeah.
The barking dog of the brain is
Ex
going on.
ah!
Yeah.
So, bringing it all back home
Yeah.
to what you do, I get this, again, very nurturing sense from you, and I feel like that's probably how you work with a lot of your coaching clients. Talk to us about what that looks like working with you in that capacity, because it just seems like such a loving space, to grow and be nurtured as a business owner.
Yeah, yeah. Like the babypreneurs, right? I I love to laugh, as we've seen. I love to get shit done, right? I'm very action focused. And I love to just create that safety, because I was nervous system jacked, hot, sweaty mess for so long. And I'm finally, after a few years, probably 2 to 3 years, finally getting to the deeper knot in my body, like metaphysical knot of relaxing and letting go. And the thing is, life is not that serious, right? We all die at the end. So, what do you want to look back on? What really matters? Because what I've seen in my work and what I see in new business owners is we just get so narrowed, focused, tight, and constricted. And I love to crack and soften that. Really, this is a great metaphor and it's new. So, thank you, Madeline. Massaging it out, releasing it. I want everybody to have fun every day. I want you to feel fulfilled, but not hustled or overworked. I want you to act from a place of integrity and certainty by, we're starting a business to get somewhere. No, you're starting a business because you are that person. You already exist in that identity that you're seeking. That's why it's coming through you. And we embed that. I have 4 main pillars that we work under, which are spiritual, the heart, emotional, and the body. And we build that foundation so that you don't have to essentially deprogram things later on. Start really robust, tenacious, and anchored into your wholeness and your value. And then you serve out from those places. And it's one-on-one work, a little bit of group work. It's no longer me. Like, as an OBM, I was banging square pegs into round holes all day, and it was hurting the client and it was hurting me. And now I'm like, there are no shapes. It's just light and color.
Here we are. So, I don't wanna put you in a shape, but would you consider yourself more of a holistic life coach than, like, a business coach? Because it sounds like you get into
Totally. Oh,
deeper
yeah.
stuff than just, "All right, this is how we're gonna be fulfilled in our business." It's like, how are we nurturing you as a human who's also a business owner who has one life to live, and we're gonna help you sort out how they all mesh together. Is that a fair assessment?
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Let's write it down so I can
We have the
use it in my
recording.
copy. Well articulated. Because I was so attached to my identity as systems and organizer. I kept thinking I had to bring that in, where now I can let go of that, relax that from shapes to color as well, and just provide support. And it part and parcel of just getting organized, which my main platform or framework is habits. Daily habits keep me organized. And then I'm flowy. Again, that masculine structure to hold that feminine energy. And it builds beautifully. And so I don't promise any cookie cutter solutions. I don't promise any sensational secret recipes. I work with the core of who someone is and pull it out so that it works for them. Because what works for me, it's not what's going to work for you or for her or for them, etc. We have to identify that and build the unique blueprint for each individual. Not that there's not similarities. Habits are good practice for a lot of people, right? And if it speaks to somebody, great, we can work on that. But it's not the only tool. The tools is really the spiritual, emotional development. And that leads the rest.
It's beautiful. I say all the time, I'm extremely efficient, so I can be very lazy. So I
Yes.
just be in my flow state and not worry about the rest of it. And I love that you have really taken the good parts of each and been able to craft that freedom from the structure. Repeat it what you said in the beginning as well. It was constriction.
Structure
Okay.
without constriction.
Structure without constriction. Beautiful. Will you tell people where they can learn more about what you do?
Everything is tagged at Powerful Inc. POWHERFULLINC. So powerful, but we don't have to enunciate it. It's a fun play on words, right?
Yep.
I'm on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, the website. I'm not on TikTok or any of those other collateral
Where the kids
platforms.
are these days.
Yeah, right? Thank you. I don't know. Yeah, standard. I'm old school.
That's perfectly fine, and you're speaking to the right crew here. We typically end the show with the same question, and that question is, what is a time in your life that change has brought an unexpected opportunity?
I think my day job has brought, like, in Canada, we call it bylaw officer. Uh, and I joke all that, and even though I'm very involved in the local industry and passionate about it in my own way, I joke all the time that it's not. Don't grow up to be one. Don't pursue this as a career. It's dumb. It's annoying. It's hard. But in the last few years, because of my current place of employment, it's brought so much healing to me and so much peace and appreciation of the gifts that I have to offer. And it gives me a beautiful and important place to deliver them from. Because if I were more rude or egotistical or consequential, you were bad, these people would not be receiving the kind of service and solutions that they do. And so for so many years, like I'm 10 plus years in this career, I was sort of like in denial, but now I'm embracing it, which is really surprising and it catches me off guard, but it's so great because, like I said, now I can just enjoy everything that's available to my life. I can have multiple streams of revenue and stability, and I can be all of who I am in all those places. And who knows what's next? Who knows? Like this it isn't a forever thing because nothing is forever, right? Except heaven, if you believe. So I can just live in the daily abundance, the daily goodness that's available, and see what else is possible after, and celebrate another platform and an important place for a lot of hurting people to receive a little bit of love and insight slash mirror holding of like, dude, take a look at yourself here. Like, this is a you thing, not a them thing.
I so admire that you bring that to a job that a lot of people aren't really a fan of. You're enforcing rules that people don't want to have enforced
On
and coming at
themselves.
yes, exactly.
They want it on their neighbor.
They want it on their neighbor, but not themselves. And that mirror holding and just that loving accountability, I think, is just a wonderful perspective that you bring to that role. And the gifts that you bring to your coaching clients as well, I can just see it emanating from your spirit. So thank you for being with us today. Thank you for sharing your insight on both sides of things. I really enjoyed the conversation and can't wait to continue following.
Yeah, likewise, Madeline. This was awesome. Thank you.